The auction block reeked of tobacco spit and desperation. And Sophia Olsen knew that when the gavel fell, her life would belong to whichever man shouted the highest number into the dusty Wyoming air. She stood on that platform in Cheyenne, year of our Lord 1873, with her hands bound loosely in front of her, and her eyes fixed on the distant mountains that promised freedom she would never taste. The auctioneer, a pot-bellied man with whiskey on his breath, grabbed her chin roughly and turned her face side to side like she was a horse being evaluated for her teeth. "Fine specimen here, gentlemen. Young, strong, got all her teeth and no signs of disease. She can cook, clean, and according to her previous employer, she does not complain much. We will start the bidding at $20. Sophia felt bile rise in her throat. This was the third time in 2 years she had been sold. The first time had been when her father's debts caught up with him, and he had traded her to a merchant heading west to settle his gambling obligations. The merchant had worked her until her hands bled, then sold her to a rancher when he decided she was eating more than she was worth. The rancher had eyed her in ways that made her skin crawl, and when his wife grew jealous, he brought her here to Cheyenne to auction her contract off to the highest bidder. 25, called out a voice from the small crowd of men gathered in the town square. 30, shouted another, a man with missing front teeth and hands that looked like they had never seen a day without dirt under the nails. Sophia tried to disappear into herself, a trick she had learned over the past 2 years. She focused on a memory of her mother braiding her hair when she was small, before the fever took her, before her father started drinking away his sorrows and accumulating debts faster than he could pay them. 35, came another bid, this one from a man who ran the local saloon. Sophia had heard stories about the girls who worked there, and none of them ended happily. The auctioneer was about to call for more bids when a new voice cut through the air, clear and firm. $100. The crowd went silent. $100 was more than most men in Cheyenne made in 3 months. Sophia's eyes snapped up to find the source of the voice and landed on a tall man standing at the edge of the gathering. He wore a worn leather vest over a simple cotton shirt, dusty trousers, and a hat that had seen better days. His face was weathered from sun and wind, with a strong jaw covered in several days of stubble. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, deep brown and steady, holding something she had not seen directed at her in a long time: respect. $100, the auctioneer repeated, his voice rising with excitement at the unexpected windfall. "That is quite the bid, Mr. Reeves. Anyone willing to go higher?" He waited, scanning the crowd, but the other men were already dispersing, grumbling about outsiders and crazy cowboys with more money than sense. Going once, going twice, sold to Ryder Reeves for $100. Sophia felt her knees weaken. She did not know this Ryder Reeves, had never seen him before in her life. Was he worse than the others? Would he work her even harder, treat her even more roughly? At least with the saloon keeper, she had known what to expect. This unknown element terrified her more than she wanted to admit. Ryder stepped forward and counted out the bills into the auctioneer's greedy hand. Then he approached the platform where Sophia still stood, frozen. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 27 or 28 years old, with lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. He smelled like leather and sage, and when he reached for the ropes binding her wrists, his touch was surprisingly gentle. "Let me get these off you," he said quietly, working at the knots. His voice was low and rough, like gravel underfoot, but there was a kindness in it that made Sophia's throat tighten unexpectedly. "Why did you pay so much?" The words escaped before she could stop them, and she immediately regretted speaking. Her last owner had beaten her for talking without permission, But Ryder did not raise his hand or even his voice. He simply finished untying the ropes and met her eyes directly. "Because you are not livestock and you should not be sold like it. Now, I have a proposition for you, Miss Olsen." Sophia Olsen. "Miss Olsen, I have a ranch about 10 miles north of here. It is not much, but it is mine. I need help with the house and the cooking since I spend most of my time with the cattle and horses. I will pay you fair wages, provide room and board, and treat you with the respect every human being deserves. You can save your money and leave whenever you want. You will be free to go." Sophia stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Free to go?" "Yes, madam. I did not buy a slave." "I do not believe in that. I bought your contract so that no one else could, and now I am tearing it up." He pulled the paper from his pocket and ripped it cleanly in half, then let the pieces fall to the dusty ground. "You are your own person, Miss Olsen. What you do from here is your choice." For the first time in 2 years, Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back furiously, not wanting to show weakness, but her voice shook when she spoke. "I have nowhere else to go. No money, no family. If you are truly offering me honest work and fair treatment, then I accept." Ryder nodded and gestured toward a wagon hitched nearby. "Then let us head home. It will be dark soon, and the ride takes a couple of hours." Sophia followed him on unsteady legs, her mind reeling. She climbed onto the wagon seat beside him, acutely aware of how close they were sitting. But Ryder kept his eyes forward, and his hands busy with the reins, never once looking at her in the way men had looked at her before, like she was something to be consumed. As they left Cheyenne behind, heading north across the open prairie, Sophia allowed herself to breathe deeply for the first time in what felt like forever. The late afternoon sun painted the grass in shades of gold and amber, and the mountains in the distance stood like sentinels promising protection. The wagon creaked beneath them in a steady rhythm, and gradually, Sophia felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Tell me about your ranch," she said after they had ridden in silence for nearly an hour. She wanted to fill the quiet with something other than her own anxious thoughts. Ryder glanced at her, seeming surprised by the question, then turned his attention back to the trail. "It belonged to my parents originally. They came out here in the 50s, built the house and the barn with their own hands. My father died 5 years ago when his horse threw him during a storm. My mother passed the following winter from pneumonia. It has been just me since then, trying to keep it running. I have about 200 head of cattle and a dozen horses. The house is solid, 2 bedrooms, a main room with a fireplace and a kitchen. It is simple but comfortable. You have been running it alone for all this time, mostly. I hire a couple of ranch hands during spring roundup and branding season, but otherwise, yes. I cannot afford to keep men on permanently, and honestly, I prefer the solitude most of the time. But the house has fallen into disarray without a woman's touch, and I am tired of burning my own cooking." He said the last part with a slight smile that softened his weathered features. Sophia found herself almost smiling back. "I am a good cook. My mother taught me before she died, and I am not afraid of hard work. I can see that." Ryder's eyes flicked to her hands, which bore the calluses and scars of someone who had indeed worked hard. "But you will not be worked to the bone on my ranch, Miss Olsen. I meant what I said about fair treatment. You will have your own room, time to rest, and Sundays off if you want them." It sounded too good to be true, and Sophia's instinct was to doubt, to wait for the catch. But something in Ryder's steady demeanor made her want to believe him. "Why did you really buy my contract? You could have hired someone from town, placed an advertisement for help." Ryder was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if he was chewing on how much truth to share. Finally, he spoke. "My mother was sold once before she met my father. Her family was poor Irish immigrants, and when they could not pay their passage, she was indentured to a family in Boston. They treated her worse than their dogs. She escaped when she was 18 and made her way west, which is where she met my father. She told me stories about that time, about how it felt to be owned by another person, to have no say in your own life. When I saw you standing on that platform today, looking like you were trying to disappear, I saw my mother, and I could not walk away. Sophia felt something crack open inside her chest, some hard shell she had built around her heart to survive. I am sorry about your mother. And I am grateful to you, Mr. Reeves, more grateful than I can properly express. Call me Ryder. And you do not owe me gratitude, Miss Olsen. You owe me good work, which I believe you will provide, and that is enough. They rode in companionable silence after that, and Sophia found herself studying Ryder from the corner of her eye. He was handsome in a rugged, unpretentious way, and there was a calmness about him that she found deeply appealing. He did not fidget or chatter nervously. He seemed comfortable in his own skin, content with silence. It was a stark contrast to the men who had owned her before, men who were always looking for the next thing to exploit, the next advantage to gain. When the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Ryder pointed ahead. There it is, home. Sophia followed his gesture and saw a cluster of buildings nestled in a shallow valley. The house was indeed simple, made of sturdy logs with a stone chimney rising from one end. A barn stood nearby, along with a smaller structure that might have been a bunkhouse or storage shed. A wooden fence enclosed a corral where several horses grazed peacefully. It was not grand or impressive, but it looked solid and well-maintained, and to Sophia, it looked like the closest thing to heaven she had seen in years. As they pulled up to the house, Ryder set the brake on the wagon and jumped down, then turned to help Sophia. His hands were strong but gentle as he lifted her down, and he released her the moment her feet touched the ground. "Let me show you around before it gets too dark." He led her first to the barn, where she met the horses and saw the neat rows of tools and tack hanging on the walls. Everything had its place, and despite the dust and the smell of hay and animals, there was an order to it that spoke of someone who took pride in their work. Then he showed her the chicken coop, where a dozen hens clucked softly as they settled for the night, and the small vegetable garden behind the house that was struggling but still producing. Finally, he brought her inside the house itself. The main room was dominated by a large stone fireplace, with a worn sofa and 2 chairs arranged before it. A simple wooden table with 4 chairs stood near the kitchen area, which consisted of a cast iron stove, a dry sink, and open shelves holding dishes and cooking supplies. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, and there were dishes piled in the sink, but the bones of it were good. "Your room is through here," Ryder said, leading her to a door off the main room. The bedroom was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. "My room is on the other side of the house. You will have complete privacy. The door has a lock if you want to use it." Sophia set down the small bundle that contained everything she owned in the world and turned to face him. "This is more than I expected." "Thank you, Ryder," he nodded, looking slightly uncomfortable with her gratitude. "There is water in the pitcher if you want to wash up. I will start a fire and make us something to eat. Nothing fancy, just beans and salt pork, but it will fill the stomach." "Let me cook," Sophia said quickly. "Please, I want to be useful." Ryder studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right. I will get the fire going and bring in water from the well. You will find everything you need in the kitchen." They worked together in a surprisingly easy rhythm. Ryder built up the fire in the stove while Sophia explored the kitchen, finding flour, lard, beans, dried meat, and a few precious onions. She set about making biscuits and a hearty stew, her hands moving through familiar motions that soothed her jangled nerves. It felt good to be doing something productive, something that was her choice. While she cooked, Ryder busied himself with bringing in firewood and water, then sat at the table cleaning his rifle. Sophia was hyper-aware of his presence, but he gave her space, never crowding her or watching her too closely. It was a consideration she was not used to, and it made something in her chest ache. When the food was ready, they sat down together at the table. Ryder said a simple grace, thanking God for the food and for bringing Sophia safely to the ranch, then dug in with the appetite of a man who had been eating his own bad cooking for too long. After the first bite of biscuit, he looked up at her with genuine appreciation. "This is the best meal I have had in months, maybe years." Sophia felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. It is just simple food. Sometimes simple is best. He took another bite, then asked, "How did you end up in Cheyenne?" "You do not have to tell me if you do not want to, but I would like to know your story." Sophia hesitated, then decided he deserved the truth. She told him about her mother's death when she was 14, her father's descent into gambling and drinking, and the day he had sold her to the merchant to clear his debts. She told him about the 2 years of being passed from one owner to another, about the work that never ended and the constant fear that the next person would be worse than the last. Ryder listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as she spoke. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment, his jaw tight. "Your father had no right to do that to you. No one does. I am sorry you went through that, Sophia." It was the first time he had used her given name, and hearing it in his deep voice sent an unexpected warmth through her. "It is over now. I am here and I intend to make the best of it. You are here and you are safe," Ryder said firmly. "I give you my word on that. No one will hurt you or sell you while you are under my roof." Sophia believed him. It was foolish, perhaps, to trust so quickly after everything she had been through, but something in Ryder's eyes told her he was a man who kept his promises. They finished their meal in comfortable silence. Then Sophia insisted on cleaning up while Ryder went out to check on the animals one last time before bed. When he returned, she was just finishing with the dishes, and he showed her where she could find extra blankets and a nightgown that had belonged to his mother. "Sleep well, Sophia. Tomorrow will be a full day, but we will ease you into things. Good night, Ryder, and thank you again." He tipped his head in acknowledgement and disappeared into his own room, leaving Sophia alone in the quiet house. She changed into the nightgown, which was a bit too short but otherwise fit well enough, and climbed into the narrow bed. The mattress was stuffed with straw and not particularly comfortable, but it was hers, in a room with a door that locked, and that made it the finest bed she had ever slept in. As she lay in the darkness, listening to the wind whisper around the corners of the house and the distant howl of a coyote, Sophia allowed herself to hope for the first time in 2 years that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change for the better. The next morning, Sophia woke before dawn, as was her habit. She dressed quickly in her worn dress and made her way to the kitchen, where she found Ryder already up, stoking the fire in the stove. He looked up when she entered and nodded a greeting. "Morning. I hope I did not wake you." "No, I am used to rising early. Let me make breakfast." They fell into an easy routine over the following days. Sophia would rise first and make breakfast while Ryder tended to the animals. They would eat together, then Ryder would head out to work on the ranch while Sophia tackled the house. She cleaned every surface, washed every dish, beat the dust from the curtains and rugs, and organized the kitchen until it shone. In the afternoons, she would work in the garden, coaxing the vegetables back to health, or tend to the chickens and collect eggs. Ryder was true to his word about fair treatment. He never raised his voice or his hand to her, never made demands she could not meet, and always thanked her for her work. He paid her wages every week, counting out the coins into her hand and telling her to save them for whatever future she wanted to build. But more than the fair treatment or the wages, it was the small kindnesses that began to chip away at the walls around Sophia's heart. The way Ryder would bring her wildflowers he found on his rides and leave them on the kitchen table without comment. The way he insisted she take breaks during the hot afternoons and would bring her cool water from the well. The way he asked her opinion on things, from what to plant in the garden to whether they should try to expand the herd next year, as if her thoughts mattered. 3 weeks after Sophia arrived at the ranch, a late spring storm rolled in from the mountains, bringing with it sheets of rain and rumbling thunder that shook the windows. Sophia was in the kitchen making dinner when a particularly loud crack of thunder made her jump and drop the spoon she was holding. Before she could pick it up, Ryder was there, emerging from his room where he had been mending a saddle. "Are you all right?" "Yes, just startled." "I am not fond of storms." She did not mention that her fear came from a night 2 years ago when her first owner had locked her in a root cellar during a tornado and forgotten about her until the next morning. Ryder seemed to sense there was more to it, but did not push. Instead, he said, "Why do not we move the cooking to the fireplace tonight? It is cozier, and you would not be so close to the window." Sophia nodded gratefully, and together they transferred the pot of stew to hang over the fire in the main room. As the storm raged outside, they sat near the warmth of the flames, Ryder in one of the chairs and Sophia on the sofa. The flickering light played across Ryder's features, softening the hard lines and making him look younger, more approachable. "Tell me about your parents," Sophia said, wanting to fill the silence with something other than the sound of the storm. "How did they meet?" Ryder leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "My father was a trapper initially, working his way west. He stopped in a settlement in Missouri to trade his furs and saw my mother working in a general store. He said he knew the moment he laid eyes on her that she was the one for him. But my mother was wary of men after her experiences in Boston, and she would not give him the time of day. So my father stayed in that settlement for 3 months, finding odd jobs and coming into the store every day to buy something he did not need, just so he could talk to her. Eventually, she agreed to let him court her, and within 6 months they were married. They saved up everything they had and came west to Wyoming to start fresh." "That is a beautiful story," Sophia said softly. "They must have loved each other very much." "They did. Even when times were hard, even when the winters were brutal and the cattle were dying, they had each other. My father used to say that a man could survive anything as long as he had a good woman by his side." Ryder's expression grew distant, tinged with sadness. "I always wanted what they had, but I have been so focused on keeping this ranch running that I have never taken the time to find it." Sophia felt a strange flutter in her chest. Over the past 3 weeks, she had found herself thinking about Ryder more and more, noticing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the strength in his hands, the kindness in his voice. She had tried to dismiss these feelings, telling herself it was just gratitude or the natural result of him being the first person to treat her decently in years. But sitting here in the firelight with him, hearing him talk about love and partnership, she could not deny the truth anymore. She was falling for Ryder Reeves. The realization terrified her. What if he did not feel the same way? What if she was just an employee to him, nothing more? What if she ruined the fragile peace they had built by revealing her feelings? She had nowhere else to go, no other options. She could not risk losing this place that had become home. "You will find it someday," she said quietly, her heart aching. "You are a good man, Ryder. Any woman would be fortunate to have you." Ryder turned his head to look at her, his brown eyes intense in the firelight. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, and Sophia felt the air between them charge with something unspoken. Then Ryder cleared his throat and looked away. "The stew smells ready. Let us eat." The moment passed, and they fell back into their comfortable routine, but something had shifted between them. Sophia felt it in the way Ryder's eyes would linger on her when he thought she was not looking, in the way he found excuses to be near her, to brush her hand when passing dishes, or to stand close when they worked together in the garden. As spring turned to summer and the days grew longer and hotter, their connection deepened. They began to talk more, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for their futures. Ryder told her about his plans to expand the ranch, to build it into something substantial that he could be proud of. Sophia shared her dream of someday having a real home, with children and a husband who loved her, though she did not dare look at Ryder when she said it. One sweltering July afternoon, Sophia was in the garden pulling weeds when she heard the sound of horses approaching. She looked up to see 3 riders coming up the trail toward the house, and her heart immediately began to race. Strangers meant danger. She dropped her basket and hurried toward the barn where she knew Ryder was working. "Ryder, someone is coming." He emerged from the barn, wiping sweat from his brow, and his expression grew guarded when he saw the riders. "Stay behind me." The 3 men reined in their horses near the house. They were rough-looking, with hard eyes and guns on their hips. The one in the middle, a man with a scar across his cheek and greasy black hair, smiled in a way that did not reach his eyes. "Afternoon. You Ryder Reeves?" "I am. What can I do for you gentlemen?" "Name is Jake Morrow. Me and my boys are passing through looking for work. Heard you might be hiring ranch hands. I am not hiring right now, sorry." Jake's eyes slid past Ryder to land on Sophia, and she felt her skin crawl. "That is a shame. Nice place you got here. Real nice." His emphasis on the last word made it clear he was not just talking about the ranch. Ryder moved slightly, blocking Sophia from view. "Like I said, I am not hiring. I suggest you move along. Cheyenne is only a few hours south if you are looking for work." Jake's smile faded and his hand moved to rest on his gun. "That is not very neighborly of you, Reeves." "We rode a long way, could use some water for the horses at least. The creek is a quarter-mile east. Help yourselves." Ryder's voice was calm but firm, and his own hand had moved to his side, close to his gun. For a tense moment, the 2 men stared at each other. Then Jake laughed, a harsh sound, and turned his horse. "All right, Reeves, we will be on our way. But you might want to be careful out here, all alone with just a woman for company. Lots of things can happen on an isolated ranch." The threat was clear, and Sophia felt ice run through her veins. But Ryder did not flinch. "I can take care of what is mine. I suggest you remember that." Jake and his men rode off, but Sophia could feel them watching, could sense the danger they represented. When they were out of sight, Ryder turned to her, his expression serious. "I do not trust those men. I want you to stay close to the house for the next few days, and if you see them coming back, you fire the rifle 3 times into the air. I will hear it and come running. Can you shoot?" "Not well, but I can learn." "Good. We will practice this evening. Come on." That night, after dinner, Ryder took Sophia out behind the barn and taught her how to load, aim, and fire his rifle. His hands guided hers, showing her how to hold the weapon steady, how to sight down the barrel, how to squeeze the trigger slowly rather than jerking it. with his body close behind hers, his arms around her as he adjusted her grip. Sophia found it difficult to concentrate on the lesson. All she could think about was the warmth of him, the solid strength, the way his breath stirred her hair. "Try it now," he said, stepping back. Sophia took a breath and fired. The recoil knocked her back a step, but she stayed on her feet, and the tin can she had been aiming at went flying. She looked at Ryder in surprise, and he grinned at her, genuine pride in his expression. "You are a natural. A few more practice sessions and you will be able to hit anything you aim at." They practiced until the light faded, and then Ryder walked her back to the house, his rifle in one hand. At the door, he paused and looked down at her, his expression serious once more. "I want you to know, Sophia, I will not let anyone hurt you. Whatever it takes, I will keep you safe." Sophia felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I know, Ryder, I trust you." His hand came up as if to touch her face, then dropped back to his side. "Good night, Sophia. Good night." She lay awake that night, listening to every sound, her mind replaying the way Ryder had held her while teaching her to shoot, the way he had looked at her in the doorway. She wanted so badly to believe that he felt something for her beyond responsibility or kindness, but she was afraid to hope. The next few days passed without incident. The three strangers did not return, and gradually Sophia began to relax again. She and Ryder continued their routine, and she continued her shooting practice every evening. But beneath the surface, she could feel something building between them, a tension that was both thrilling and terrifying. It came to a head one evening in late July. The day had been brutally hot, and after dinner, Ryder suggested they sit outside to catch the cooler evening breeze. They carried their chairs out to the porch and sat watching the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of red and gold. "I have been thinking," Ryder said after a long silence. "The ranch is doing well. Better than it has in years, honestly, and a lot of that is thanks to you. The house is in order, we are eating better, the garden is producing more than I thought possible. You have made this feel like a home again, Sophia." "I am glad," Sophia said softly. "I love it here. This has become home to me too." Ryder turned in his chair to face her, his expression earnest. "That is what I wanted to talk to you about. I know when you first came here, I said you could leave whenever you wanted, that you were free to go, and that is still true. But I find myself hoping you will not want to leave. I find myself hoping you might want to stay, permanently." Sophia's heart began to pound so hard she was sure Ryder could hear it. "What are you saying?" Ryder stood and moved to kneel in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. His palms were rough and calloused, his grip warm and strong. "I am saying that somewhere along the way you stopped being just an employee and became essential to my life. I think about you constantly, Sophia. When I am out with the herd, I am thinking about getting back to see your smile. When I am mending fences, I am thinking about hearing your laugh. You have become more important to me than this ranch, than anything. And I realize I am probably making a mess of this, but what I am trying to say is that I love you, Sophia Olsen. I have loved you for weeks now. Maybe from the moment I saw you standing on that auction platform looking so brave and so broken at the same time. And I know I have no right to your heart after everything you have been through. But if you could find it in yourself to give me a chance, I swear I will spend every day of the rest of my life treating you like the priceless gift you are." Tears were streaming down Sophia's face before he finished speaking. All the walls she had built around her heart came crashing down, and she threw her arms around his neck, holding him tightly. "I love you too, Ryder. I have been so afraid to say it, so afraid to hope, but I do. I love you so much." Ryder's arms came around her, crushing her against his chest, and she felt his body shaking with emotion. When he pulled back to look at her, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You mean it?" Truly, truly. You are the first person in years to treat me like a human being, to see me as more than something to be used. You made me feel valuable again, Ryder. You made me feel like I mattered. How could I not love you? Ryder cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. You are priceless, Sophia. Not because of what you can do for me, but because of who you are. You are strong and brave and kind, and every day I wake up grateful that I found you. Then he kissed her, soft and gentle at first, as if afraid she might break. But when Sophia kissed him back, pouring all of her love and longing into it, he deepened the kiss, his arms tightening around her. It was everything Sophia had dreamed a kiss could be, full of passion and promise and a future she had never dared imagine for herself. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ryder rested his forehead against hers. Marry me, Sophia. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life loving you the way you deserve to be loved. Yes, Sophia whispered, her voice thick with tears. Yes, Ryder, I will marry you. They held each other on the porch as the stars came out overhead, and Sophia felt a peace settle over her that she had never known before. This was where she belonged. This was home. The next morning, they rode into Cheyenne together to see the preacher and arrange for a wedding. Sophia wore her best dress, which was not much, but Ryder looked at her like she was clothed in silk and jewels. They walked through the town hand in hand, and Sophia held her head high, no longer a piece of property to be bought and sold, but a woman in love, about to marry a good man. The preacher was happy to officiate, and they set the date for 2 weeks hence, which would give them time to prepare. On the ride back to the ranch, Ryder could not stop grinning, and Sophia found herself laughing with pure joy. They talked about their future, about expanding the house to make room for the children they hoped to have someday, about growing the ranch into something they could pass down to those children. But their happiness was short-lived. 3 days before the wedding, Sophia was hanging laundry behind the house when she heard horses approaching. She looked up and felt her blood run cold. It was Jake Morrow and his 2 companions, and this time they were not just passing through. Sophia dropped the sheet she was holding and ran for the house, but Jake was faster. He spurred his horse forward and cut her off, grabbing her arm and hauling her up onto his saddle before she could scream. She fought, kicking and clawing, but he was too strong. Ryder. She managed to scream his name once before Jake clamped a hand over her mouth. Shut up, woman. Where is Reeves? As if summoned by her cry, Ryder came running from the barn, rifle in hand. His face went white when he saw Sophia struggling in Jake's grasp, then red with fury. Let her go, Morrow. Right now. Jake laughed, that same harsh sound from before. I do not think so, Reeves. See, we have been watching this place and we noticed how fond you are of this pretty little thing. Figured she might be worth something to you, so here is the deal. You give us all the money you have in that house, plus the deed to this ranch, and we will let her go. Otherwise, my boys and I will take her with us, and you will never see her again. Ryder's hands tightened on the rifle, and for a moment Sophia thought he might shoot. But Jake had positioned himself so that any bullet that hit him would also hit Sophia. That ranch has been in my family for 20 years. It is all I have. Then I guess you have to decide what is more important, Reeves, the ranch or the woman. Sophia shook her head frantically, trying to tell Ryder not to do it, not to give up everything for her. But Ryder's eyes met hers and she saw his decision there, clear as day. She was more important to him than land or legacy. She was priceless. All right, Ryder said, lowering the rifle slowly. All right, you can have it. Just do not hurt her. See, I knew you would be reasonable. Now go get that money and the deed. And do not try anything stupid or my boys will put a bullet in her before you can blink. Ryder backed toward the house, his eyes never leaving Sophia. She saw the anguish on his face, the helplessness, and her heart broke for him. He was giving up his family's legacy because of her, and she could not bear it. As Ryder disappeared into the house, Sophia made a split-second decision. She remembered the lessons Ryder had taught her, remembered where he kept his pistol tucked in his belt, just within reach if she was quick. She went limp in Jake's grasp, as if fainting, and when he adjusted his grip to keep her from falling, she lunged for the gun. Her fingers closed around the grip, and she yanked it free, twisting in the saddle to jam the barrel under Jake's chin. "Let me go, or I will blow your head off." Jake froze, his eyes widening in surprise. "You do not have the guts, little girl. Try me." Sophia's voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. "I have been beaten and sold and traded like an animal. I have nothing left to lose, and I will die before I let you take me from the man I love. So you have a choice, Morrow. You can ride away right now and live, or you can stay and die." "What is it going to be?" For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then one of Jake's companions spoke up. "Boss, maybe we should just go. This is not worth getting killed over." Jake's jaw worked, fury and humiliation warring on his face. But Sophia pressed the gun harder against his throat, and she saw the exact moment he decided she was serious. "Fine, fine, you crazy woman. Get off my horse." Sophia slid down, keeping the gun trained on Jake the entire time. Ryder had emerged from the house and now stood beside her, his own rifle aimed at the three men. "I think it is time for you to leave Wyoming, gentlemen, because if I ever see you on my land again, I will not be as merciful as my future wife." Jake spat on the ground, then wheeled his horse around and galloped off, his men following close behind. Sophia and Ryder stood watching until they were out of sight, and then Sophia's legs gave out. Ryder caught her, pulling her into his arms and holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "You scared 10 years off my life," he said, his voice rough. "What were you thinking, pulling a stunt like that?" "I was thinking I was not going to let them take your ranch. I was thinking I was not going to be helpless ever again." She pulled back to look at him. "You were going to give up everything for me." "Of course I was. I meant what I said, Sophia. You are more important than any piece of land. You are priceless to me." She kissed him then, hard and fierce, pouring all of her fear and relief and love into it. When they broke apart, they were both shaking. "Let us get married tomorrow," Ryder said. "I do not want to wait another 2 weeks. I want you to be my wife officially and legally so that no one can ever question your place here." "Tomorrow," Sophia agreed. "I do not want to wait either." They rode into Cheyenne that very afternoon and convinced the preacher to perform the ceremony the next day. They spent the night in the town's small hotel, in separate rooms to preserve propriety, and the next morning, July 25, 1873, Sophia Olsen became Sophia Reeves. The ceremony was simple, attended only by the preacher and his wife, but to Sophia it was perfect. She wore a simple white dress that the preacher's wife loaned her, and Ryder wore his best clothes, his hair slicked back and his face freshly shaven. When he took her hands and spoke his vows, promising to love and cherish her for the rest of his days, Sophia felt like the luckiest woman alive. "You may kiss your bride," the preacher said with a smile, and Ryder did not need to be told twice. He pulled Sophia into his arms and kissed her in front of God and witnesses, sealing their union. They rode back to the ranch as husband and wife, and that night, Ryder carried Sophia over the threshold of their home. He set her down gently in the main room, his eyes dark with love and desire. "Welcome home, Mrs. Reeves." "It is good to be home, Mr. Reeves." They came together in a tangle of limbs and whispered words of love, and Sophia gave herself to her husband completely, holding nothing back. He was gentle and patient, mindful of her inexperience, and when they finally joined together as man and wife, Sophia felt a completeness she had never known before. This was what it was supposed to be like, this union born of love and respect and mutual desire. Not something taken, but something given freely. Afterwards, they lay tangled together in Ryder's bed, which was now their bed, and talked late into the night. They made plans for their future, for the children they would have and the life they would build together. Sophia told Ryder about her dreams of having a daughter to teach and raise the way her own mother had raised her. Ryder told her about his hopes of expanding the ranch, of making it prosperous enough that their children would never have to struggle the way he and Sophia had. "We will build something good here," Ryder said, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Something lasting, and we will do it together." "Together," Sophia agreed, pressing a kiss to his chest. "Always." The next few months passed in a blur of happiness and hard work. Sophia threw herself into making the ranch a true home, sewing curtains for the windows and planting flowers around the porch. Ryder hired 2 young ranch hands to help with the fall roundup, and under his guidance, they brought in a good profit from selling their cattle. In October, Sophia began to suspect she might be pregnant. She waited a few more weeks to be certain, then told Ryder one evening over dinner. His face lit up with such joy that she felt tears prick her eyes. "A baby. We are going to have a baby. Yes, if all goes well. I think it will be born sometime in late May or early June." Ryder came around the table and lifted her out of her chair, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "We are going to be parents, Sophia. I am going to be a father." "You are going to be a wonderful father," she said, cupping his face in her hands. "Our children are going to be so loved, Ryder, so very loved." That winter was hard, with bitter cold and heavy snows that kept them housebound for days at a time, but Sophia did not mind. She was warm and safe with Ryder by her side, and they spent the long evenings talking and planning for the baby's arrival. Ryder began building a cradle in the barn, carving it from smooth pine and sanding it until it was soft as silk. Sophia sewed tiny gowns and blankets, her heart full of anticipation. As her belly grew round with their child, Ryder became even more protective. He insisted she rest more, do less of the heavy work. He brought her breakfast in bed and rubbed her feet when they swelled. He talked to the baby through her stomach, telling stories and singing songs his own mother had sung to him. And every night, he held Sophia close and told her how beautiful she was, how much he loved her, how grateful he was that she had come into his life. In late May, as the wildflowers bloomed across the prairie and the cattle grew fat on spring grass, Sophia went into labor. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Ryder feared he might lose both his wife and child. But Sophia was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and in the early hours of May 28, 1874, she brought their son into the world. Ryder held the tiny, squalling baby in his arms and felt his heart expand to a size he had not known was possible. The boy was perfect, with a full head of dark hair and his mother's delicate features. When Sophia opened her tired eyes and held out her arms, Ryder placed their son in them and watched as she counted his fingers and toes, marveling at the miracle they had created together. "What should we name him?" Sophia asked, her voice hoarse from labor. "Robert," Ryder said without hesitation. "After my father, Robert Reeves. If that is all right with you, it is perfect." Sophia kissed their son's forehead, then looked up at Ryder with eyes full of love. "Thank you, Ryder. Thank you for giving me this life, this family. Thank you for seeing me as more than cattle on an auction block." Ryder knelt beside the bed and took both his wife and son into his arms. "You were never cattle, Sophia. You were always priceless, and I am the one who should be thankful." You saved me, just as much as I saved you. You made me whole." They stayed like that for a long time, a family united in love, and Sophia felt a peace settle over her soul. This was everything she had ever wanted, everything she had dreamed of during those dark years of being passed from owner to owner. She had a home, a husband who loved her, and now a child to raise and cherish. She was free in every sense of the word, and it was the most beautiful feeling in the world. Life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm with baby Robert. Sophia marveled at how quickly Ryder took to fatherhood, how gentle his rough hands could be when changing a diaper or soothing a crying infant. He would walk the floor with Robert for hours when the baby was colicky, singing old cowboy songs and telling stories about the ranch and the land. As Robert grew from an infant into a toddler, the ranch prospered. Ryder's hard work and fair dealings had earned him a good reputation, and he was able to expand the herd and hire more permanent help. But no matter how busy he was, he always made time for his family. Every evening, he would come home from the range and sweep Robert up into his arms, tossing him in the air until the boy shrieked with laughter. Then he would pull Sophia close and kiss her, telling her she was still the most beautiful woman in Wyoming. When Robert was 2 years old, Sophia became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and in the spring of 1876, she delivered a healthy baby girl. They named her Sarah, after Ryder's mother, and if Ryder had been smitten with his son, he was utterly besotted with his daughter. He claimed she looked just like Sophia, with the same delicate features and the same strength in her eyes. "She is going to break hearts someday," he said, cradling Sarah against his chest while Robert played at his feet. "She is going to be strong and independent, just like her mama," Sophia corrected with a smile. "No man will ever treat our daughter as anything less than the treasure she is." Agreed. "Any man who wants to court Sarah will have to go through me first, and I promise you, I will be a terrifying father-in-law." Sophia laughed and shook her head, but she felt a fierce gratitude that her children would grow up knowing they were loved and valued, that they would never have to endure what she had endured. Ryder had broken the cycle of abuse and neglect, and together they were building something better. The years rolled by in a blur of seasons and milestones. Robert learned to ride almost before he could walk, and by the time he was 5, he was accompanying Ryder out to check on the cattle. Sarah grew into a bright, curious child who followed her mother everywhere, learning to cook and garden and care for the animals. The ranch continued to thrive, and Ryder was able to buy more land, expanding their holdings until they had one of the largest and most successful operations in the territory. But success did not change Ryder. He remained the same kind, humble man Sophia had fallen in love with, always ready with a smile or a word of encouragement. He treated his ranch hands fairly, paid them well, and earned their loyalty in return. The house was always full of laughter and love, and neighbors would comment on what a fine family the Reeves were, how blessed they were. In 1879, when Robert was 5 and Sarah was 3, Sophia found herself pregnant once more. This time, she gave birth to twin boys, which was both a blessing and a challenge. Ryder named them Thomas and Timothy, and he threw himself into caring for the new additions with the same enthusiasm he had shown for Robert and Sarah. The house became even more chaotic, but it was a happy chaos, full of life and love. One evening, when the twins were about 6 months old and Robert and Sarah were asleep in their room, Sophia and Ryder sat together on the porch watching the sun set. It was a ritual they had maintained throughout their marriage, this quiet time together at the end of each day. "You ever think about that day in Cheyenne?" Sophia asked, leaning her head on Ryder's shoulder. "The day you bought my contract, all the time," Ryder admitted. "I think about how close I came to not going into town that day. I had planned to stay at the ranch and work on mending fences, but something told me I needed to go, and I am grateful every day that I listened to that voice. I think about what my life would have been like if you had not been there, if someone else had bought me, or if I had been sold to that saloon keeper. I would not have this life, this family. I would not have you." Ryder tightened his arm around her. "You do not have to think about that anymore, Sophia. You are here, you are mine, and I am never letting you go. We have built something beautiful together, something lasting. Our children will grow up knowing they are loved and valued. They will never have to experience the hardships we did. That is our legacy." "Our legacy," Sophia repeated softly, looking out over the land they had worked so hard to build. The ranch that had been Ryder's family home had become their family home, and someday it would belong to their children and their children's children. It was more than just land or buildings. It was a testament to what two broken people could create when they loved each other with their whole hearts. "I love you, Sophia Reeves," Ryder said, turning to kiss her temple. "You are still the most priceless thing in my life." "And I love you, Ryder Reeves. You gave me everything I thought I had lost. You gave me a reason to hope again, to dream again. You gave me a future." They sat together as the stars emerged overhead, comfortable in the silence that came from years of knowing each other completely. Inside the house, their children slept peacefully, safe and loved. The cattle lowed softly in the distance, and somewhere a coyote howled its lonely song to the moon. It was the sound of the West, wild and beautiful and unforgiving, but Sophia and Ryder had carved out their own piece of paradise in the midst of it. The years continued to pass. Robert grew into a serious young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Ryder began teaching him the business side of running a cattle operation, preparing him to take over someday. Sarah developed a love for horses and could outride most of the ranch hands by the time she was 12. She had her mother's strength and her father's determination, and Sophia knew she would grow into a remarkable woman. Thomas and Timothy were inseparable, always getting into mischief, but with such charm that it was hard to stay angry at them. They kept Sophia busy, but she would not have changed a thing. Every day was full and rich, sometimes exhausting, but always meaningful. In 1886, when Robert was 12 and preparing to help with his first major cattle drive, Sophia discovered she was pregnant again. She was 33 years old now, and this pregnancy was harder than the others. But with Ryder's constant care and support, she made it through, and in the early spring of 1887, she delivered another daughter. They named her Margaret, after Sophia's mother, and she completed their family. Ryder was 41 now, with silver threading through his dark hair and lines deepening around his eyes. But he was still strong and vital, still the man Sophia had fallen in love with all those years ago. He held baby Margaret with the practiced ease of an experienced father and looked at Sophia with such love that it still made her heart skip a beat. "6 children," he said wonderingly. "We have 6 beautiful children, Sophia. We are truly blessed." "We are," Sophia agreed, watching as Robert held his new sister carefully as Sarah cooed over her as the twins tried to peek at her tiny face. "We have everything I ever dreamed of and more." As Margaret grew, the pattern of ranch life continued. The children learned to work hard, to value honesty and integrity, to treat others with respect. Ryder and Sophia made sure their children understood how precious their life was, how easily it could have been different. They told them the story of how they met, how Sophia had been sold on an auction block and Ryder had rescued her, not just physically but emotionally and spiritually as well. "Your mother is the strongest woman I know," Ryder would tell his children. "She survived things that would have broken most people, and she came out of it with her kindness and her capacity to love intact. Never forget that strength is not just about physical power. It is about resilience, about refusing to let circumstances destroy who you are at your core." The children absorbed these lessons, and they grew into fine young people. Robert eventually took over much of the day-to-day running of the ranch, allowing Ryder to slow down a bit. Sarah married a neighboring rancher's son when she was 20, a young man who loved her fiercely and treated her with the respect Ryder had taught her to demand. The twins went off to school in Denver for a few years before returning to help run the ranch. Margaret, the baby, had her mother's gentle heart and became a teacher in Cheyenne, traveling back to the ranch every weekend to visit. Through it all, Sophia and Ryder remained devoted to each other. Their love had not dimmed with time but had deepened and matured, becoming something solid and unshakable. They still sat on the porch every evening, watching the sun set over their land. They still held hands when they walked. They still told each other they loved each other every single day. In the summer of 1903, when Sophia was 50 and Ryder was 57, they celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary. The children threw them a party at the ranch, inviting friends and neighbors from miles around. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and Sophia felt overwhelmed by the outpouring of love. As the evening wound down and the guests began to leave, Ryder pulled Sophia onto the makeshift dance floor one more time. They swayed together to a slow song, and Sophia rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him. 30 years, Ryder murmured. "It feels like both a lifetime and just yesterday." "I know what you mean. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life, that you are mine." "I am yours, Sophia. I have been yours since the moment I saw you, and I will be yours until the day I die." "Do not talk about dying," Sophia said, pulling back to look at him. "We have many more years together. I hope so. But if something were to happen to me, I need you to know that you have given me the best life I could have imagined. You took a lonely cowboy and gave him a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up every morning grateful for another day. You are my everything, Sophia." Tears filled Sophia's eyes. "And you are mine, Ryder. You saw me when everyone else looked through me. You valued me when others saw me as worthless. You saved me." "We saved each other," Ryder corrected gently. "We were both lost souls who found home in each other." They danced until the musicians packed up their instruments and the last guest departed. Then they walked hand in hand back to the house, their home, the place where they had built their life together. That night, they lay in their bed, the same bed they had shared for 30 years, and held each other close, grateful for every moment they had been given. The years that followed were gentler, slower. Ryder officially retired and handed over the ranch to Robert, though he still went out riding most days and helped when he could. Sophia spent her time with her grandchildren, of which there were now several, telling them stories and teaching them to bake and garden. She and Ryder traveled a bit, taking a train to San Francisco one year and to St. Louis another, but they always came back to the ranch. It was their heart, their center, the place where their love had grown and flourished. In 1910, Ryder fell ill. It started as a cough that would not go away and progressed into something more serious. The doctor from Cheyenne came out and confirmed what they all feared: pneumonia, the same disease that had taken Ryder's mother all those years ago. Sophia nursed him devotedly, hardly leaving his side, praying with everything in her that he would recover. For a while, it seemed he might pull through. But one cold February night, Ryder took a turn for the worse. The children gathered around his bed, and Ryder looked at each of them, telling them how proud he was, how much he loved them. Then he asked for a moment alone with Sophia. She sat beside him on the bed, holding his hand, her tears falling freely. "Do not leave me, Ryder, please. I am not ready." "I am sorry, my love," Ryder said, his voice weak. "But I need you to listen to me. You are the strongest woman I know, and you will get through this. You will live a long life surrounded by children and grandchildren who adore you. You will see this ranch continue to prosper. And someday, when your time comes, I will be waiting for you. I will find you, just like I found you in Cheyenne all those years ago. I love you so much, Ryder. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. And you, Sophia, are priceless. Never forget that. You are worth more than all the gold in California, more than all the cattle in Wyoming. You are everything." He closed his eyes then, and with Sophia holding his hand, Ryder Reeves took his last breath. He was 64 years old, and he died knowing he was deeply loved. The grief was overwhelming. Sophia felt like part of her soul had been ripped away, but she did not fall apart. She could not, because Ryder was right. She was strong, and she had children and grandchildren who needed her. So she mourned, but she also lived. She continued to tend her garden, to sit on the porch in the evenings, to be present for her family. The years after Ryder's death were bittersweet. Sophia missed him every single day, but she found comfort in the life they had built together. She watched her children thrive, saw her grandchildren grow and have children of their own. The ranch continued to prosper under Robert's management, and Sophia knew Ryder would have been proud. She lived to be 83 years old, a remarkable age for someone who had endured so much hardship in her youth. Her mind remained sharp until the end, and she loved telling stories to her great-grandchildren about the Wild West, about cattle drives and storms, and the day a cowboy named Ryder Reeves paid $100 for her contract and then tore it up, setting her free. "Your great-grandfather was a hero," she would tell them. "Not because he wore a badge or won gunfights, but because he saw value in someone everyone else had overlooked. He taught me that people are not commodities to be bought and sold. We are all priceless in our own way, and we all deserve to be treated with dignity and respect." On a warm summer evening in 1933, Sophia Reeves passed away peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by family. She was buried next to Ryder on a hill overlooking the ranch under the endless Wyoming sky. Her tombstone read simply, "Sophia Olsen Reeves, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, she was priceless." The ranch continued for generations after, passed down from parent to child, a testament to the love and hard work of two people who refused to let their circumstances define them. And every evening, as the sun set over the land, casting long shadows across the prairie grass, it was said you could sometimes see two figures sitting on the porch of the old house, holding hands and watching the day fade into night, together for all eternity. Their story became legend in that part of Wyoming, told and retold around campfires and dinner tables. It was a story about resilience and redemption, about seeing worth in others when the world has forgotten it. But most of all, it was a love story, one that proved that even in the harsh and unforgiving landscape of the Wild West, love could not only survive but flourish. Ryder had seen Sophia not as cattle on an auction block, but as the remarkable woman she was. He had given her freedom, respect, and a love that transformed both their lives. And Sophia, in turn, had given Ryder a family, a home filled with laughter and warmth, and the knowledge that he had made a real difference in the world. They had saved each other in every way two people could, and their legacy lived on in their children, their grandchildren, and the ranch that still stood proud against the Wyoming sky, a monument to what could be built when two hearts beat as one. The end of their story was not sad, despite the years they eventually spent apart, because true love does not end with death. It lives on in the memories of those left behind, in the values passed down through generations, in the very land that bore witness to their devotion. Sophia and Ryder's love story became immortal, a beacon of hope proving that even in the darkest circumstances, when someone sees your true worth and treats you accordingly, everything can change. And so the ranch endured, the family grew, and the legend of the cowboy who said, "You're priceless, and I'll treat you that way," lived on, inspiring generations to see beyond the surface, to value people for who they are rather than what they can provide, and to love with the kind of fierce, unwavering devotion that transcends time itself. In the end, that was the greatest legacy of all, not the land or the wealth, but the simple, profound truth that every person has immeasurable worth. And when we recognize that worth in others and treat them accordingly, we change the world one life at a time.